Ziguan, Spring. Chapter 12. Maple Sugar Time. Everyone in the cabin heard it, the far-off creaking and groaning, the boom of the lake ice. The lake had started to move again. The ice was breaking up. Once the waves began, huge sheets of ice shoved against each other, pushing towers into the air. Nokomis, Mama, Day, Pinch, Angeline, and Omakias all ran outside, gazed on the horizon, and saw the crackling and snapping waves of the ice. They felt the surge of lake water in their blood. They knew at last that the back of winter was entirely broken. Omakias grinned. Her smile was now whole. New teeth had grown in over the winter. She was older. Soon, spring plants would poke up through dead leaves. The curled heads of the ferns, buds, roots, fresh new leaves, fat lake trout would sleepily rise from the bottom, hungry to be caught. Siskoet and whitefish would fill their nets. They would be able to think of something other than the next bite of food. They would live again, truly live. Angeline went to the mission school every day now. She was learning to write her name in Zagana Shiminoan, the white man's language, and she taught Omakias the things she learned. Using a pointed stick to write in wet mud, Angeline showed Omakias and Nokomis the meaningful signs, which looked like odd tracks. What animal would leave these? Omakias teased. Be patient, Nokomis counseled. Let's find out what your sister has learned. They're letters, Angeline said, eager to share her knowledge. One follows the next. You look at them just like tracks. You read them. They have a meaning and a sound. That's a good idea, like our picture writing, Nokomis said. The girls knew people like Fishtail's father, Day Thunder, who kept the records for the religious gatherings, the Midawiwin, and etched stories and songs on scrolls made of birch bark. They had seen some birch bark writing, and they knew that Nokomis could etch pictures into bark too. She also knew where certain marks had been placed upon lake rocks long ago. Some of the marks were made by the spirits, some were made by humans. Others were drawn by a giant race of people who had lived on Earth in the old days and had disappeared. Angeline's description of the white man's tracks interested in Omakias in spite of herself. The system sounded incredible. Sounds, meanings, but the idea made sense. Thereafter, to learn the Zaganashimoin letters and sounds became a source of amusement, for the evenings were still long. "Aye," said Angeline, tracing the letter on the rough stone of the hearth. "A," said Omakias. "B, C, D." She learned to say the picture. She learned to make the pictures, and she learned to make the sounds, slowly, all of them. Words would follow, Angeline said, but Omakias could not believe that would happen. She remembered that last winter, before the sickness began, she had seen Fishtail walking from the mission school. Had he learned to make the white man's tracks? Had he learned to write his name? Had he learned to read the words of the treaties so that his people could not be cheated of land? "Bushu, nindinawe maganidok," called Fishtail one day. He was at the door of the cabin, calling hello to his relatives. Grandma greeted him kindly, for he was ashamed of his thinness and weakness. She brought him inside. His hair was short and wild as porcupine quills, his face starved and sallow with grief. No longer did he wear the proud, somewhat disdainful look he'd worn when walking seriously along through the woods, his pipe cradled in his arms. He was still hawk keen, with a strong and handsome face, but his eyes were more human, humble, gentle. He gazed pityingly down at Omakias and touched her hair. "Little frog," he said, and there was a hint of smile in his voice, as though to see her brought him comfort. "My good wife loved you as her little sister. You made her laugh with your quick ways. She told me you were much loved by the bear people. She told me also that you had a bird named Ondig." "Ondig!" called Omachias, and like a dark arrow her crow swooped down and landed on her shoulder. Ondig looked curiously at Fishtail, wondering whether he possibly had something to feed him. The bird danced from foot to foot, took a strand of Omachias's hair in his beak, but did not pull. Ondig tucked the hair behind Omachias's ear, just like a grandfather soothing a child to sleep. "Oh, ah!" said Fishtail in wonder. "You are much beloved by the creatures." Over his shoulder, Fishtail carried a blanket, meaning that he had much to say and planned to spend the night. Day greeted him, holding him by the arms, and Nicoma stirred up the fire, adding a stick there, a bit of wood in exactly the right spot to make it blaze up cheerfully. Mamma had made a good stew, filled with flaky chunks of fish, and the kettle bubbled hot, hung above the hearth fire. Fishtail took off his big moose-hide mitts, and Angeline dished up a wooden bowl of the soup, eager for him to sit and warm himself. Because he was related as a cross-cousin, and also because he had been the husband of her friend, she was familiar around him and not shy at all. She tried to cheer him up, to bring a smile to his face, by teasing him gently. "Day needs snowshoes all winter, but you," Angeline pointed, Angeline pointed with her lips at Fishtail, "already have yours on, eh?" Fishtail gave a little smile, but there was still too much sadness in him to laugh. He waggled his feet. They were big, it was true, almost as big as snowshoes, as big as old Tallow's huge long ones. "Aye, yeah, they come in handy," Fishtail acknowledged. "If I lose a paddle, I've always got one attached." He took great gulps of the fish broth, and slowly, feeling better, he warmed to the talk with Day. They were planning this year's sugaring, a time everyone looked forward to with joy and excitement, as much as ricing, maybe even more. For when the maple sap began to run, it meant that warmer days, pleasant sun, all the beauties of spring were close at hand. This sweetness just at the raggedy end of winter. Nokomis was excited as a girl, and her enthusiasm made everyone smile with affection. But the Creator expects us to be ready. While you talk, you men work. She herself was smoothing out a paddle to use in stirring the syrup, and just the day before, Day had started hollowing a peeled, smooth piece of basswood for a trough. Now, Day asked for the use of Omachias's gun barrel flesher. She brought it quickly from its place in the corner. She was glad to find another use for Day's gift besides the usual unpleasant one of scraping hides. Taking the hide flesher in his hands, Day sharpened the end well on his sharpening stone. Holding the barrel in his strong fingers like a chisel, he hit the other end with his mallet, tapping long slices of wood away from the inside of the log. Every strip of wood he tapped from the inside, Pinch grabbed and threw into the fire. The trough grew smoother, deeper. Fishtail, meanwhile, smoked peacefully and looked into the leaping flames. "You get to work too," Angeline said, smiling. She tossed him a bit of venison jerky, though for him to chew on when he finished smoking his kinnikinnick.